So Joe Biden basically went into the witness protection program. Okay? Nobody saw him for more than 2 months. He was gone. And he was in his house in Delaware, and he did some media, but the media was a disaster. Roll the tape.
Listen, you got to come see us when you come to New York, VP Biden.
I will.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black. I'm prepared to say that I have a record of over 40 years and that I'm going to beat Joe Biden. Look at my record.
Well, he's going to beat himself. I'm going to beat Joe Biden. Now, look, I make mistakes. I make gaffes. Everybody does. But Biden does it every minute of every day. I'm going to beat Joe Biden. Doesn't know what he's saying. He just doesn't. Now, whether it is a mental thing, I don't know what it is. Lack of concentration, old age, I don't know. But he wants to be the leader of the most powerful country on earth, and he doesn't know what he's saying half the time. Trump caught a huge break here because it's just going to get worse for Biden. Not going to get better. Now, the most important thing that I picked up on Biden was a tweet from May 20th. Put it on the screen if you would. When we emerge from this crisis, the pandemic, we can't just go back to the way things were before. We need to take this country to a place where we've never been. When we finally live up to our highest ideals and everyone gets a full share of the American dream, unquote. Now that is a message to Bernie Sanders and his supporters that, hey, I'm going socialism, because that's the only way, in theory, that every American gets a full share of the American dream. Because some Americans don't want to work. Some Americans are addicted to substance. Some Americans are mentally ill. Some Americans are evil sons of you-know-what. You can't give them an equal share of the American dream. It's impossible. You can provide them, as the liberal precincts do and socialism does, with a bare minimum. So that is what Biden, that tweet, and I don't believe Biden writes his tweets. Trump does in the morning. But Biden doesn't. And this is basically, hey, Bernie Sanders and you socialists, when I get in there, I'm going to move this country way, way left. And he will. Biden, as I said last week and the week prior to that, will never stand up to Elizabeth Warren, Nancy Pelosi, Bernie Sanders. Never. In a million years will he stand up to that cabal. New York Times, Washington Post, CNN. Never going to stand up to that. So Disney reopens in July, it announced today. The National Hockey League is going to have a playoff season in the summer. And this is the key. Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti doesn't want to open. Doesn't. Has to. Here he is.
Tonight, I can announce that starting tomorrow, all retail establishments may reopen for in-person shopping. With the proper safety measures and with extraordinary caution, we can now go back into all stores.
All right, now what's going on? So I'm not a genius. It wasn't a hard prediction for me to make, although I think I'm the only one that made it. The people are revolting. Now, the media is not going to cover that story. They did a little bit in Michigan. They did a little bit in Orange County, California, when there was a surge of anger against the governor of Michigan, and then everybody went to the beach in Orange County, Laguna and Newport. But there is an anger growing that people have to get back to work and the services have to open. The folks will cooperate. They're going to wear the masks. They'll distance. Not all of them. We saw some ridiculous scenes in Arkansas and in Florida over the Memorial Day weekend. It was absurd. But most people, I'd say 85% of Americans will be cautious, and I'll speak to that at the end of the program with the final thought. But the politicians know It's over. The lockdown is over. Even in New Jersey, where Governor Murphy is very militant against reopening, he's going to allow graduations to happen in the summer after July 6th. De Blasio, the communist who runs New York City, I mean, that's apart. But when Los Angeles gives up and says, okay, you can go back, you know it's over. Okay. The unintended consequences of this reopening are that there's going to be more cases of the virus. Let's just pray not a lot more, but that's going to happen. I'll give you the stats in a moment. Now, Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, met with Donald Trump today. And this is a very important story for you to understand. So Cuomo brings his mask, he goes down to D.C., he talks with the president. What Cuomo wants is federal money, but not to bail out his $6 billion deficit. I'm sure he'd love that. But he knows that Trump's not going to give him that right now. Congress is going to have to allocate that money. What Cuomo wants to tap into with President Trump is infrastructure. Because the president's already on a record saying, look, I'm going to rebuild America. That's one of his campaign themes. And New York needs a new train tunnel to New Jersey, which costs a bloody fortune. It also needs a rapid transit to LaGuardia Airport. That's what Cuomo wants. He wants feds to pay for that. And then he can put a lot of people back to work in New York. Okay, that's why Cuomo went to Washington. The only reason. Because he knows he's not going to get a bailout for New York State. So let's get to the big executive order, which isn't really much. I got to tell you, it's Donald Trump is mandating a review of a law that shields companies like Twitter, Google, Facebook from being held liable for content. Now, here's what this is. Okay. So all of the social media says, we're not in the business of compiling information. We're not publishers. I'm a publisher. Okay, I give you information. What we are is distributors. We, Google, Facebook, Twitter, distribute stuff that comes into our business. So everybody can see it. So therefore, you can't sue us if we put up something defamatory or libelous. See, libel is when you write something that's not true about somebody. Slander is when you say something not true. So you can't sue us because we're not checking it out. But now, after Donald Trump has used Twitter for 4 years to advance his own cause, now all of a sudden they're fact-checking the president. That puts them into publishers, okay? Publishers fact check, not distributors. So anyway, what this is saber rattling by President Trump. He's sending them a message, and a message getting across loud and clear because you have kind of a split in philosophy. So Mark Zuckerberg, who runs Facebook, he don't want to get in any of this fact-checking business. He don't want to have any of that because it'll cost him a bloody fortune to put up people to monitor everything on Facebook. And he goes, no, we don't want that. So leave us alone. The Twitter guy, Dorsey, he made a mistake by hiring this guy. You look at this guy. Look at him. So the New York Post reports that Yoel Roth, okay, there's Roth. The other guy that you saw was, I guess, Dorsey. Yoel Roth, he's the fact checker on Trump. When Trump went after mail-in ballots. That's what it's all about. Donald Trump saying mail-in ballots will lead to fraud, and then Twitter goes, oh, no. Of course it'll lead to fraud. Ridiculous. So anyway, put this guy Roth up again. The New York Post reports that Yoel Roth called the White House Nazis on a number of occasions. He's a far-left loon. He's the fact-checker for Twitter? This is the guy? Come on. So we all know the game. The game is that in Silicon Valley, or where this stuff is, almost 90% of the executives are far left or left. They're sympathetic. They hate Trump. And they do little things. They censor people like Glenn Beck and others. You know, and it shouldn't happen.